Hello and welcome to the next episode of DDR, a podcast all about your favorite drow, Drizzt Do'Urden. My name is Justin, and in this episode we will be diving deep into Chapter 12 of Homeland, titled This Enemy, They, discussing all of our favorite plot points, characters, and more.
And my name is Jeffrey. We're so happy you guys came to join us on another journey into the Underdark. For those of you watching on YouTube, you might have noticed I've cleaned the camera a little bit. So hello.
You're crystal clear today, Jeffrey.
Right? HD TV, just wanted to cut into your living room at home or whatever you're watching this on. Maybe on the mobile, so I'm still a tiny little guy in the corner. Hello. But once we delve down deep into enough, we're going to go ahead and take a look at how this chapter relates to the Dungeons & Dragons tabletop game that me and Justin love so much. Remember, as a reminder, it is the 5e edition that we try to keep the rules to because that's what we know.
That's what we know. But, like if you play any version of the game, I'm sure you can, the things we talk about would be applicable and interesting in some way. But by now, I'm sure you guys figured out that following along with the show is really easy. All you have to do is pick up your copy of the book, read the next chapter, and tune in every week. But remember, we want to hear your thoughts too, so you can reach out to us via email at drizztdoneright@gmail.com.
Remember, we also have the other social media sites available online. We have the Facebook, we have the Instagram, both of them at Drizzt Done Right. But if the books don't seem to be enough for you, you can always be part of that ongoing discussion that we have on our very own Drizzt Done Right Discord. Remember, the Discord invitation link is always in the podcast description, probably somewhere down around the bottom there.
Right there.
So come on in and be a member of our Dim Light Squad. We always like to, dim light a few contributions here and there as we go. And today, some of our newest members are Lathia, Vader is my father, and Ra. So we wanted to give a big welcome to the Underdark. Welcome to our Dim Light Squad.
Welcome, guys and gals.
We have a bunch of different rooms besides the general chat. Ramses was in the fan art section wondering about this actual size of Guinevere. And Justin, I know you were checking out the conversation. That really kind of actually blew my mind because I never really considered the actual physics of the size of Guinevere compared to Drizzt as well.
Right. Well, they had that one picture of Guinevere and, or was that? No, that wasn't actually Guinevere. That was like a liger or something. It was
the real life photo. Yes.
The real life photo, but it was like some enormous cat. And they're just like, I always thought of Guinevere as being around this big. And there was like a chihuahua underneath it. It looked like the size of a mouse.
Oh no, the chihuahua was on the statue.
Oh, was that a statue? Right.
Yep.
Well,
I thought it was a bookend statue when we first saw it, like a small miniature.
Oh, okay.
And then somebody they were pointing it out. They're like, I don't know if you noticed the scale for the chihuahua. I was like,
right. It's like, that's a dog?
Right?
No, chihuahuas are small.
The liger picture, you're pretty close, I think, because I was looking at the actual, I don't know, science of it per se. And it turns out that an African male lion usually runs, what is this? Let me see, up to about 8.3 feet in length and up to 570 pounds. So going on a description of Guinevere being about a 600-pound panther and 10 feet in length, she's larger than what you would see as like a full-grown Mufasa, but in real life.
That's terrifying to know that there are cats that big walking around on Earth. Luckily, I'm on the opposite side of the Earth.
Oh yeah, as I said, but with an astral plane connection, Guinevere, she's not too harmful.
Yeah, but
nice drows.
Now, I didn't have a chance to jump in on the conversation there, but I always thought that Guinevere wasn't quite that big, just because, like drow in general are typically smaller. Mm-hmm. But then I know one of the first books, this is, I guess, the second book I got that was the Crystal Shard book, and it's all blurry here, but you can see a picture of Drizzt and Guinevere coming out of his onyx figurine. And thinking about Drizzt as being a drow, not tall, like 5.5 feet or so?
You're close. He's on the taller spectrum of the drow. They in the D&D book breaks him out to be up to about 5'5" in height.
Okay.
Drizzt is described as 5'4", so he's taller for a drow, but not as tall as you would think for like humanoid.
Yeah. So comparing his size in this picture, anyway, in this artwork, the artwork on the front of the Crystal Shard book, Guinevere doesn't look like he's 600 pounds in this picture, but
Yeah.
You know,
And
we
I mean,
didn't
he
really
wouldn't
get
be
to the
very bulky either.
well,
You think when at 5'4", he would still be very thin and slight in
yeah.
nature, and Guinevere would be just massive in comparison. Looking at him,
We've had a lot of conversation about Guinevere in this podcast and on the Discord and everything, but we haven't actually even seen Guinevere. We heard Guinevere being referenced one time in the book so far, right? At least once.
yeah, I think so.
So
Because we know the Onyx figurine, and we brought that up, and
right.
but we haven't really gotten to her part in the book. I guess
Right.
it's an ode to the fact that she is such an impactful
Yeah.
character to this series.
I am
Or
very excited to
world.
see that first encounter between Drizzt and Guinevere. It's been a long time since I've read this book, so I'm excited to get to that point again.
I agree.
Well, cool. Awesome. Well, what's new, Jeffrey?
Not a whole lot, man. Just kind of, enjoying the weather as it goes up and down in these crazy spikes. It's going to be winter or not winter, I guess, unless you're in California. But it's been
Right.
spring, then it's been fall, and spring, little summer, back to fall.
Yeah. Little back and forth. It's been refreshing. I just wish we had a nice day on a Saturday. It's kind of rainy a little bit today, cloudy at least, and really got to get outside and start doing some yard work here, but can't do it just yet. But
I know we had a couple of nice days when I was working at the farm and doing, helping deliver some vegetables and such.
Nice.
And it's always nice when it's a nice sunny day. I think we hit one that was like 60 degrees before it turned back down to like the 30s the next day.
Yep. Yeah.
I got to roll the windows down, let the tunes out a little bit, and kind of enjoy it. I let my hair down, but it's kind of leaving me at a rapid pace, hanging out with it.
You're looking better than I am as far as your hair is concerned.
You have, sir, for those who are looking on YouTube, you have quite a distinguished buzz cut to the top.
Well,
Don't let them lie to you.
That's about all they see. They don't see what's going on in the back, and we'll keep it that way.
He's like, my headphones are strategically placed.
No, we Sarah and I took the kids to Hibachi for their first time last night. Oh my word, that was so much fun. I
saw the message in the family chat. You
we
French fries.
We didn't take many pictures, but yeah, Christopher just got French fries because he's super picky. He's not going to eat anything that the guy makes. So, but oh man, they had so much fun with the fireballs and everything. I was
gonna say, it's got to be so much fun for them as the visual art that Hibachi is.
I mean, there were a couple times Christopher cowered underneath the table because he was scared, but they did pretty good. We were sitting with another family that had 2 young kids, so we were having a good time.
Nice. Nice. Hibachi is one of those things that's I think a little underplayed in the fact that it's really almost like a performance art every time you go out. You should go to a place that does it right instead of just cooking, because the guys that they roll the eggs around, they do the fire, the volcano with the onions. You got to have that, and it's about the flair and the panache as much as it is about the delicious food.
Yeah, and it was delicious. Oh my goodness, I got steak. I haven't had steak in a while, but. Anyway, all right, Jeffrey, we have a show to talk about here. This is episode 12. Let's go ahead and get this started with, not the Drizzt. Yep. We're starting with the insight check.
An insight check is where we're going to investigate the inner monologue of Drizzt. These come along every once in a while, and we really like to just kind of poke directly at them, highlight them a little bit, or dim light them a little bit. So the Academy. It is the propagation of the lies that bind Drow society together. The ultimate perpetration of falsehoods repeated so many times that they ring true against any contrary evidence. The lessons young Drow are taught of truth and justice are so blatantly refuted by everyday life and wicked Menzoberranzan that it is hard to understand how any of them could believe them. Still they do. This first part is, to me, it almost sounds like the survivor of a cult, like making their way back to society and finding out that the holes in their upbringing were so obvious, but they were too naive to know where to look in order to poke holes in that logic. As you're growing up, you're very naive to the fact that, the authoritarian figures might be wrong. Mm-hmm. They can't be wrong. Right. They're authoritarian figures. I thought that was kind of crazy there. looking back allows them a new perspective on their indoctrination and how it was used against them. Drizzt recognizes that even decades removed from the academy, he is still frightened of the academy.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not because of like the physical horrors or the mental horrors even that he went through. He's frightened because of those who survive. They revel within the evil fabrications that shape their world. It's kind of haunting.
Yeah.
They live with the belief that anything is acceptable if you can get away with it. The self-gratification is the most important aspect of existence. And that power comes only to she or he who is strong enough or cunning enough to snatch it from the falling hands of those who no longer deserve it. Compassion has no place in Menzo Berensson, yet it is compassion, not fear, that brings harmony to most races. It is harmony working towards shared goals that precedes greatness. I really like that part because he notices like the greatest void that he sees within the Drow is also their biggest redeeming quality that you find in other cultures and races that are destined for greatness. Is kind of how he sees it. Like the Drow are so shaped and warped, misshapen and warped by their cultural approach that they feed on everything negative about other cultures.
Right.
Drizzt understands now that the pillars of Lolth lead to the subjugation of his people, not the exaltation. He ponders how he was able to survive the academy and use its teachings to reinforce what he cherishes instead of allowing them to destroy it. It must have been Zaknafein, his teacher, his trainer, his mentor, his father. He was able to somehow impart a piece of himself through the lessons that he taught Drizzt. In a way, it allowed Drizzt to hear the screams of the protest against murderous treachery, the screams of rage from the leaders of the Drow society, the high priestesses of the Spider Queen, echoing down the paths of his mind, ever to hold a place within his mind, the screams of dying children. Drizzt in this moment is a reflection of Zaknafein.
Yeah, absolutely. Very nice insight check, Jeffrey. Very nice insight check.
Thank you. I try to roll high.
I'm not going to be able to top that next time. All right. Well, let's go ahead. Let's go ahead and jump it right into the Drizzt. The Drizzt is the part of the show where we take a look at this week's chapter and we give you the Drizzt of it. As I point at my computer screen rather than my camera.
Yeah, no, when you wind that back, I was actually just playing with the camera and pointed like several seconds before you. So it actually looks like I jumped the gun, Mike.
All right.
It happens when you have a visual medium.
Yeah, if you're not watching us, what are you guys doing? I mean, maybe you're driving. In that case,
it
makes
listening
sense.
At their commute to work. Maybe they went to the gym.
If you're driving, don't watch us. Just listen. That's fine.
Unless you have those screens on the back of the SUV panels, right? Because then you can just pull over, pop in the back, check it out. But no active driving while watching. It is discouraged. We'd like you to stay alive to catch the next episodes that we have.
Indeed. All right, so here we are, Chapter 12. Chapter 12 starts off with Drizzt making his way up a wide stone stairway leading toward the academy. At the top of those stairs are 3 structures. The first one, Sorcerer, the School of Wizardry. Drizzt is going to spend 6 months there in the beginning of his 10th year. I believe the 10th year is his last year. So the first 6 months of his last year will be at Sorcerer. And then there's Arachtinolith, which is the School of Lolth, I guess sort of like the religious school. Drizzt will be housed there his last 6 months of his 10th year. So... where will Drizzt be going for the first 9 years? The pyramid-shaped school, that pyramid-shaped building over there, that is known as Melee Magthir, or Magathir, or Magthir. That's how I'll go about pronouncing it. So I assume Drizzt is making...
Once you swing and hit the ball, run, buddy, run, go.
It's all about confidence, right? So I assume that Drizzt is making his way up these stairs with a bunch of other initiates. It doesn't say specifically if that's happening, but I assume that that's what happens, because at some point he realizes that of his companions, some of them are other nobles, and he kind of, for a brief moment, is just like, well, I wonder how my skills are going to compare to theirs. Like, did they have the same kind of training that I had? And he's kind of wondering, probably similar to anyone going into a new school or a new job. It's just like, this is me, these are my colleagues, I wonder where I fall amongst everyone, I can't help it. That's exactly how I was starting my new job. I'm going in and I'm just like, man, these are all like people that were in the Navy, people that were like nuclear engineers. And here I am, like I was a teacher,
I'm the guy with two thumbs.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I think that's it's one of the things that you can always relate to. Like, there's those fun parts when you come through these books, looking at the humanity of it, the human nature, whatever, how it relates to us, where we can find ourselves within the characters. But I mean, I always picture it kind of like most fantasy setups is kind of like if you play Diablo series, you get those sweeping steps in the astral plane when you go towards where the angels are from in it. And I always think of that like those grand staircases. So as he walks up here, I kind of imagine it like, the seventh family's over there with little Timmy, and he's, hey, I'm gonna make you guys proud, stab, stab, stab. And then you have, the 62nd family, they're hugging and saying goodbye to their Drowkin over there. And he's just kind of walking his way up past all that, in his mind, like getting everything locked in, like, ready to go, because he's been trained to be a heat-seeking missile from day one. Like, there's no, last minute goodbyes. Hey, Mom, let me give you a hug before we go. So I kind of imagine a little bit of both of that as he's walking up this, grand staircase of sorts past people. Yeah. And just kind of focus solely on his mission ahead of him.
Yeah. Yeah, and we didn't see any kind of goodbye with his mom or anything like that. I mean, it could have happened before this, but
Matron's goodbye was having him stab Yuck Yuck.
Yeah. Oh man, poor Yuck.
She's like, "All right, Sonny, you killed Yuck Yuck. You have a great day, great Drow warrior. You
see you in 10 years."
Yep. Maybe. Maybe she might not be there waiting for him when he gets out. He might have to walk all the way home.
Yep. So, on his way up, a fellow Drow initiate named Kelnaz of House Kenafin, 15th house of Menzoberranzan, introduces himself to Drizzt. Drizzt responds in kind, adding on his house's surname. So he introduces himself as Drizzt Do'Urden of Derman Naashes Bernin, House Do'Urden, 9th house of Menzoberranzan. So glad that you
had the Drizzt this week.
We didn't bring that up at all in this podcast yet. Here we are in episode 12, and neither of us attempted to pronounce Derman Naashes Bernin. I've practiced it so much.
I bet you our house nobles can pronounce it, and here we are I'm just actively running from that word. What is that? Derman Naashes Bernin?
Yeah, you
That's
nailed
what I'm
it.
going with, buddy.
I would say you nailed it. So
just hit it and run.
So Drizzt whips that out, and that's kind of like just he's showing that he's a notch above what's his name, Kelnaz here. And so
do you think he's actively showing him that, or do you think he's just from Drizzt's point of view saying this is my formal name?
Well, I think that was actually mentioned in the chapter. He was trained to introduce himself that way.
Okay.
So I think it's coming from his mother, just like, hey, don't embarrass our house. This is how you introduce yourself. We are kind of nobles amongst all the other houses. We're a high enough house. We're within the top 10.
Right. So it's the same as like, don't eat your salad with that shrimp fork because that's going to embarrass us.
Yep.
And I might have to kill you. They're a little bit more extreme than just, the Tudor society. I get you.
So I think that's where it's coming from more so, because then Kelnaz recognizes that he is in the presence of nobility and drops to a low bow. And Drizzt is just kind of like, oh, this is nice. His head just gets a little bigger there. So he does prefer being treated this way to how he's usually treated by his family. So I think now, and this is kind of why I think his mom trained him to introduce himself that way, but now he's recognizing why. It's like, oh, people treat you differently if you do this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, that is part of, you think about it, like, here's a reward to the trappings of that society, go peacock yourself and others will bow and show attention. And
Right.
like, when Dynan is like attacking the bugbears in chapter 1, they're not moving fast enough. You think maybe this is like an echo of that training where it's like, look, I am of house. Let me hit this again. Derman Naashasbernin.
Yeah.
You should move faster.
Yeah. So they made their way into Mele Magthir. Drizzt did catch a glimpse of his brother Dinan from far away, but he was trained. He was basically told by his brother, like, do not acknowledge me. That's not going to end well if you do that. So do not acknowledge me. But he does see him from a distance before he makes his way in. But they make their way in, and then the initiates are all being herded into a large oval room. Here, they were greeted by a master, Hatchnet, the master of lore. His job basically sounds like it's to shape the Play-Doh-textured minds of all the male Drow into these hateful killing machines.
Yes. I had to stop there in the video and give you a thumbs up because I didn't go through your entire Drizzt. So a little behind the scenes action for the people at home. I didn't know that was coming, and that is exactly how I see Master Hatch now.
He's just
I love it. The Play-Doh.
Just like mushing their heads, melding them in the way that he wants that they should be in a Drow society. So he starts off with a brief history lesson describing how the Drow used to be surface dwellers. It was horrible. There was a bright ball of fire that ruled the day, and at night there were small, tiny reminders of the light during the day, all strewn about the night sky. Stars, right? Sometimes there was even a larger light in the sky at night. Of course, he was referring to the moon.
I thought he meant like shooting stars. I was like, wait a minute, how do they have such an offhand knowledge of shooting stars? Yep. Nailed it. The
moon. He went on to describe how the Drow used to walk beside surface elves. It's like, we thought the fairies are friends. We called them kin. But eventually there came a day when the fairies drove the Drow into the depths of the earth, and that is where they found their goddess Lolth. And all throughout this speech that he's having, there are a number of initiates that are shouting out an acknowledgement, even reverence to what Hatchnet has to say. Hatchnet decides that it's best to allow this speaking out of turn rather than punish them for this offense. Because, it's just kind of, it's acknowledging his words, and, as peers are yelling out things like that, it's only going to convince the others to kind of fall in.
And in that moment, because as the dominant authoritarian figure in that room, he has the ability to either punish those who speak out and castigate them, or to allow it. And like you're saying, in that moment, everything they're saying is kind of like building his hype train.
Exactly.
So he's like, you know what? I should just reach out there and just, but you're a pretty good hype Drow. Keep it up. Yeah.
So Hatchnet continued, "We are Drow, rulers of all your desire, conquerors of land you choose to inhabit." And then someone shouts out, "The surface?"
Like, how about that?
Like, who said that, Jeffrey?
That's got to be a poorly trained Drow when you think about how they've been readied to come to this school. And not only does he just speak out, because again, Hatchnet can just walk over there and whoop him.
Just like
so
tear the kid's tongue out,
then, and then also be like, I can go anywhere. What about the surface?
Why not the surface?
Little smart aleck.
Yeah, but he lets it go. He does shoot it down. He's just like, well, who would want to return to that vile place? Let the fairies have it. And but man, I was like, oh, like I feel like that room was probably quiet enough to hear a pin drop, but I don't know.
We're gonna get into it with my dim light for
Yeah.
sure, but
Nice.
I see that as a little bit of a darker. What is that movie like? V for Vendetta. That's
Oh,
like
yeah,
a
yeah.
noir type setting for
Yeah.
how he.
Yeah.
Love it.
So Drizzt just stood there, absorbing Hatchnet's propaganda speeches for days, learning how the Drow think of surface elves, grey dwarves, gnomes, humans, halflings, and all the other races, which is basically mostly negative.
I think negative of all other non-Drow, right? Is there any race that we've met so far that they see even near themselves?
Not near themselves, no, but at least they do trade with the Grey Dwarves, right? So it's
right. They're not like kill on sight like the gnomes,
right? Yeah. So there's at least that, but so
they tolerate the Grey Dwarves. Okay.
So there's 10 days of this that they're just getting bombarded with this, like I said, propaganda. And then after 10 days, the initiates were about to start their grand melee, which is pretty much exactly what it sounds like. You think Super Smash Brothers, a bunch of people go in, but one person comes out on top. So this grand melee was including all of the initiates in Melee Magthier. I guess the idea is to get them into an order so that they know who's the best of the best and who's at the bottom. So each initiate was granted their choice of sparring weapons. So, of course, Drizzt chose 2 wooden curved swords that felt similar to his scimitars. He whips them around a little bit and they feel good, so that's what he takes. And then the initiates made their way toward the arena, which wasn't a plain gladiator ring. It instead sounded like it was more like a natural, like it was filled with natural formations that would allow for a variety of different strategies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like it was like a wide open cavern, but there was nooks and crannies like a fjord if you're looking over top of the land formation.
Yeah. So the masters, including Drizzt's brother Dinan, so they were observing from catwalks above to call out anyone that failed in their sparring match. So does that mean that Dinan is a master of Melee Magthier? Or is he like a upper level student? I didn't catch that.
If you guys tell us we're wrong, you can go ahead, hit the Discord up, shoot us an email. I don't believe that Dinan is a master yet, but I do believe he's like on the upper cusp of graduating students, kind of like he's taking his assistant teacher role. You know, where he's not the head teacher who runs the class, but he's the one they bring along to groom to become the teacher. Like, Tahani, she's been hanging out in the back of our video for those who want to see what one of my beautiful kitty cats look like. She kind of runs around. She likes to hang out with me.
Every time she's on the desk, I'm just like, it brings a smile to my face.
Oh, that's the back of my chair.
Or that too. Yeah. But she was just just sniffing the microphone there.
Oh yeah. Armchair. She's like, what is this? What is that?
Oh yeah. What else did I wanted to say? I wanted to say something else. That's gone. So, quickly the initiates made their way, forming teams and strategies to give them an advantage. Jeffrey, this is the Hunger Games.
Well before the Hunger Games.
The Hunger Games.
Yep. And it's Battle Royale before they ever started making Battle Royales.
Before Fortnite was ever a thing. We had
a grand melee.
Exactly. Kelnaz, the drow that introduced himself to Drizzt on the way up the stairs, he knew that he didn't stand a chance by himself, so he managed to convince Drizzt to form a duo between the two of them.
I kind of picture Kelnaz as this, and again, they are not big to begin with, but even compared to Drizzt, I picture him on the much smaller, frailer section of a drow build. Like almost like a sniveling little like, oh no.
Especially by the end, by the time you start to see him fighting, it's like, yeah. So I agree with that.
I kind of picture Drizzt is more of the Arnold Schwarzenegger of the two, and Kelnaz is a little bit more of the Danny DeVito, just that size discrepancy.
Right. So Drizzt and Kelnaz, their first strategy was basically to let everyone else tire themselves out. That's a pretty solid strategy. Just like, hey, stand back,
goals.
Let them fight. And honestly, like when I'm playing against people in what's it called? Super Smash Brothers. If we're playing like you only have 5 lives, yeah, I'll be avoiding combat as much as possible. Let them fight it out, and then I'll go in and clean up some kills.
Yeah, selectively choose your advantage and engage on your terms as much as possible.
Yeah. Now that might seem a little, what's the word? Slimy, a little sneaky. Like not the most honorable. But it's like,
who says that? The people that gets killed by those guys. That's who determines that it's a slimy move.
So,
it's like Mortal Kombat when you would play it early on. A guy knew all the combinations, but you beat him by mashing the 2 buttons, by all swinging the toggle stick around, and it worked that one time.
Right.
You earned that. You earned that.
It's like you have no skill. Well, who's on the leaderboard?
Scoreboard says different.
So that was their first strategy. It didn't last long. Eventually, an aggressive student with a long pole basically attacked Drizzt. The attack,
like a halberd of sorts.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Okay.
It's basically like a really long weapon with sort of like a spear at the end. He showed up and started attacking Drizzt. Drizzt found the attack to be pretty clumsy compared to what he was used to. So he was kind of stunned. I was just like, wait, what? And he's like acting like he's fainting and things like this.
Yeah,
and,
to still be stunned after fighting Byuk and finding out that that's how he rolled. Like, because when Byuk fought him, he was like, this is not how a Drow would fight.
Right.
And then he ends up fighting a Drow, and it's like, wait a minute, this is how Byuk would fight.
Yeah. So he thrust his scimitars right into the student's chest. And as soon as he did, of course, these are wood, so he's not actually piercing or anything like that, but a blue light appears on the head of this Drow, and a call from above informed the two that the aggressor was defeated. Again, the masters are up there basically refereeing everything.
It's like magical laser tag. He went, got him, and all of a sudden,
very cool. I would totally play.
Absolutely. I would run out of cardio so fast that I would have a blast.
So Kelnaz recognized from this encounter that he chose his partner well. Yeah. Drizzt and Kelnaz needed to relocate since their position was given away by the announcement of their victory. So they made their way around the corner and found themselves face to face with 2 more initiates. One of them immediately fled, and Kelnaz was in pursuit. The other one, Drizzt expertly dispatched. A blue light on his face and a call from above, "Fall where you stand," signified signified Drizzt's victory in the duel. The loser was outraged. He kept on attacking, and Drizzt disarmed him right before a flash of lightning exploded on the chest of the attacker. So he fell to the ground and was just like in agony. And again, a call from above, "You are defeated." This time, he didn't have to say "fall where you stand" because he was already lying down.
Yep. His feet were above his head. He was knocked prone.
Yup. A breathless Kelnaz eventually returned, saying that the other one fled and got away. The other one that fled got away. And I'm just like, did he, Kelnaz?
Did you just let him get away, though?
I think he just let him get away. Kelnaz just like rounded the corner, saw that he was running, was just like, okay, I'm just going to hang out here for a little bit, wait until they're done, and then go back.
Right, like make a lot of noise, waggle your weapon at him. Like, yeah, you keep going.
That's right, you run. So the grand melee continued with a few more encounters. Drizzt's last encounter included him fighting a Drow that also had 2 sword poles. The Drow came in with a double thrust low, which we all know at this point, along with Drizzt, the best counter to that is
cross down.
The cross down.
That parry is burned into his memory.
This time, however,
parry.
Well, parry's fine. This time, however, he acted on instinct, bringing a foot up between the hilts of his crossed blades and used the heel to bust in the nose of his opponent, who fell back stunned. And Drizzt is standing there just like, I knew the parry was wrong. Drizzt quickly ended the young Banray. We found out earlier, I forgot to mention, that it was a young Banray, house.
Top house.
Yep, top house of Menzo
House
Baronzon.
one.
And as Drizzt started grinning with this excitement over his victory, then there was this explosion on Drizzt's skull. And as he was falling, he managed to just barely turn around and catch a glimpse of Kelnaz walking away, betrayed by his teammate. So,
what a drow Kelnaz is, though. Right? That's both a compliment and a judgment, I guess, at the same time, right?
Oh, yeah. I feel like Drizzt is going to have something to say to him in the next chapter.
Yeah. I mean, and it's a very drow thing to do, right? We were just talking about it in the insight check, where it's the deceit, it's the ability to snatch victory from the hands of those who are not strong enough to keep it. And Kelnaz, you just realized there, had this planned all along. So when I said earlier he looked like a sniveling little nerd.
Oh, he's a slimy skis ball.
Nerd's the wrong term. It just sounded right. But little right. Gollum type guy on the end. Yep. He portrays that on purpose. He wants Drizzt to think, I think, that it's like, look, I'm so harmless. Hey, we're friends. Ooh, you're the big protector. And then the moment that everything is won, he's like, stab. Well, yeah. It's mine.
Well, he had to take Drizzt out before it was the last two, or else he would have no chance. And
Not at all.
I think he even said, thought that in the chapter at one point, where he's just like, ooh, this guy's really good. I can't compete with this. I'm going to have to take him out before it's just the last two. And the best time to do that, well before.
From a strategy and a tactician standpoint, it makes beautiful sense. The problem is when you're reading it and going through it, it's like the emotion of the moment. Oh, the betrayal. Oh, the betrayal.
Yeah.
Like, Drizzt was carrying you around, protecting you. Like, I got this, bro. Hang back, and just whack, smacking everybody around like Bruce Lee in the middle of a mass of people, right? Just kicking everybody's butt. And then Kelnaz is like, "Oh, you did so great, stab."
Yep. All right. Well, that is the Drizzt. Let's go ahead and kick it into gear here. We'll go right into the dim light reel.
The dim light reel is where we cast darkness on our favorite parts of the chapter, and dim light all of our favorite characters, events, descriptions, and more. So for me, I wanted to go ahead and say for my dim light reel, I thought I cast a little darkness on the Master Hatchnet and the role that his rhetoric plays in the Drow culture. Yeah, in the first 11 chapters, we've come to see that Zaknafein fears what the Academy is going to do to Drizzt. How it may change his nature. We get a glimpse of how that's actually going to happen right from the beginning, right? It says, I am Master Hatchnet. That's how he introduces himself, automatically dominating the room as he explains he's the master of lore. Their first 50 days will be spent here, and they will bring no weapon to this place. In the few chapters that we've gone through so far, some of we talked about how some regimes will use like a sort of mind control in order to keep their people in order, how it helps to reinforce the authoritarian control that they already have in place. We saw how like the matriarchy lends itself towards the subjugation of the males, but now we're getting a look at seeing how those male warriors are going to be molded with the lessons and disciplines through training to be forged. You are Drow, he snapped suddenly. Do you know what that means? Do you understand where you come from and the history of our people? Menzo Baronzon was not always our home, nor was any other cavern of the Underdark. Once we walked the surface of the world. Right? Maybe he spins like theatrically almost into Drizzt, right? He goes, do you know of the surface? Like, I don't want to hit a political vein or go too far down those roads, right? But purely on a cinematic level, in my head, this scene reminds me of the Nazis from World War II with, I think specifically of Joseph Goebbels and the media department, and how it was used as a way to reinforce the views of the regime among the people, and it kind of helped shape how they saw their position in the world. These young Drow have left their home for the first time, and as they go into the vaunted academy, still soft and malleable for their lessons. That's why I said I love that Plato reference you made. It's going to come, the shaping will come at the hand of a master of their craft. Like the much way that Zaknafein trains Drizzt to be so superior in his skills through weapon combat, Master Hatchnet Man, he's got that silver tongue. He is all
Right.
charisma.
Yeah.
Right. He rolls with advantage every time.
Yep.
So, an awful place, Hatchnet continues, turning his back on the group, right? Each day, as the glow begins its rise in Narbandal, a great ball of fire rises into the open sky above, bringing hours of a light greater than the punishing spells of the priestess Lolth.
Oh, have you ever heard
He
of
deli-
anything so horrible?
No, especially because we just saw that lightning bolt destroy Drizzt's vision, put him at such a disadvantage, and it's because of the impact, shock, and awe of that spell. And here he is, like 1,000 of those lights,
Yeah.
all in one moment for hours of the day. And he delivers this line with his arms outstretched, reaching towards the sky. And you can see he's captured their attention, and he's using the focus to reinforce the perils of the surface world. Right? He's beginning to lay the foundation of fear and hatred of those who are different. He's got this shamanistic, cult leader kind of feel to him at this moment. He goes, even in the night, when the ball of fire has gone below the far rim of the world, one cannot escape the uncounted terrors of the surface. Reminders of what the next day will bring. Dots of light. And sometimes a lesser ball of silvery fire mar the sky's blessed darkness. I thought you did a great job of speaking of this. For me, it was really neat how he crafts something that we see as beautiful in the world.
Right.
To be these terrorizing aspects of a world that they've never been to. We see a sunrise and we're like, oh, we should go paint this. We should write poems about this. This is gorgeous.
Yesterday morning, the sunrise was just it was pink and even purple. It was whoa. Yeah. And it's to a drow, that's horrible.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, he describes the sun as this blazing, hateful image.
Yeah.
Then, even the night, he talks about the stars and the moon as these distant balls of fire, which, ironically, though, they are. Right. In real life, they are these distant balls of fire. But he crafts it into this intimidating visage.
Yeah.
Then he goes, once our people walked the surface of the world in ages long past, even longer than the lines of the great houses. In that distant age, we walked beside the pale-skinned elves, the fairies. I picture him delivering this line with a lot of emotion, bringing it all the way up to just short of rage-inducing at the end when he says, fairies. Yeah. I mean, we know that the Drow are taught that the surface elves are inferior, right, beings. Mm-hmm. Then he's reinforcing that here. The Drow that graduate this academy, they're going to go on to be parts of the storied houses of Menzoberranzan. And as the next generation of Drow that are coming up, they're the uncles and the brothers that will all have been indoctrinated just like this for centuries. And they're going to be the ones shaping the next generation, just ensuring that rewash or rinse and repeat cycle. One student cries out that it can't be true. And Hatchet, at that point, I feel like he kind of slithers in a little closer to that student, intimidating in size and presence. And he just holds this moment and he decides how to use it. Mm-hmm. He goes, it is. We thought the fairies our friends. We called them kin. We could not know in our innocence that they were the embodiments of deceit and evil. We could not know that they would turn on us suddenly and drive us from them, slaughtering our children and the eldest of our race. Without mercy, the evil fairies pursued us across the surface world. Always we asked for peace, and always we were answered by swords and killing arrows. Here he goes on reinforcing the plight of the Drow. We see this a lot in reality, where countries who have brutal beginnings may seek to craft a better image of themselves and indoctrinate a creation story that highlights their persecution and innocence, right? Mm-hmm. He goes, then we found the goddess. All praise to the Spider Queen. It was she who took our orphaned race to her side and helped us fight off our enemies. It was she who guided the four matrons of our race to the paradise of the Underdark. It is she who now gives us the strength and the magic to pay back our enemies. We are the Drow, he cried. You are the Drow, never again to be downtrodden, rulers of all you desire, conquerors of lands you choose to inhabit. This part slams home the pride and the nationalism that is Menzoberranzan, what it is to be Drow. the unity that can hold them together. He imbues them with a sense of purpose, a sense of righteousness, and a feeling of justified vengeance against a common enemy. I picture this when you said it earlier, same thing. The surface? Came a question from a student, and Hatchnet turned with the flair of a theater performer. The surface? I feel like it's in Pinocchio where the guy's trying to sell him on the island, the performer.
Right, yeah.
That whirly mustache. Like,
yeah.
The surface? Who would want to return to that vile place? Let the fairies have it. Let them burn under the fires of the open sky. We claim the Underdark, where we can feel the core of the world thrumming under our feet, and where the stones of the walls show the heat of world's power. Like, what a job he does of selling it all, right?
Yeah.
Those toxic waste pits over there, no. They provide an ambient glow. The landfills with rotten mess spilling out, those are opportunities to slay the vermin it will bring. XP for everybody. No matter what negative point you would be able to bring out about the Drow culture, he'd be able to show you just how proud they are of it. That's what I'm saying. His charisma's got to be so high, he's rolling with like triple advantage.
Right.
There's like no way you're going to bring up a negative point against him. They weren't forced into any of these choices. Any perceived hardships are actually just great opportunities. And any flaws are, they're due to the common enemies, not the Drow, the surface elves that aren't really elves. They're fairies. And this is just like the first of 50 days that are the impressionable Drow young are going to face with Master Hatchnet.
Oh boy.
I just think that that's such a great part of the chapter.
Oh, yeah.
It was so, I don't know, eerie and impactful, because we've been hearing about it the whole way up that, like, why is Zaknafein so concerned with what Drizzt is about to face? What doesn't he like about Drow culture? We get these little peaks.
Yep.
Oh, that's a failed raid. This is a successful raid. Oh, you found out you had a brother that got assassinated. Your mom, she's kind of mean, right? Like, oh, parents are so cruel. And then you go to the academy where they're going to shape him, and this guy just, day one, just wham, just right in on the gate, just goes.
Yeah. Crazy. No, that was an awesome part of the chapter. The one thing that I was thinking as we're going through this conversation, this monologue almost, obviously there are a lot of lies being said here.
From Hatchnet? Yes.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So I know that it's like, it is official lore that the Drow used to be on the surface, and they were eventually driven to the ground. But I feel like his story obviously does not hold up when they're talking about being on the surface, and it's like, oh, and the ball of fire in the sky, it was horrible. It's like, I don't know that it would have been horrible for the Drow back then. I mean,
no,
honestly, they wouldn't have even been Drow back then.
Right. As I say, they've genetically become different beings at this point.
They
through,
wouldn't,
selective enhancement.
Right.
I guess that's the best way to put it.
They wouldn't have developed their shoot, I just lost it. Their eyesight, their infravision. They wouldn't have acquired that until after they've been underground for generations. And so it's,
not just that, the pure color of their skin, I believe, would have been different because now they're underground in the cave completely. Whereas before, they probably would have looked very similar in a way to surface elves.
So it's just interesting to hear that perspective, even though it's very obvious that part doesn't quite fit well. But yeah, very cool, very cool. My dim light for this week has to do with the encounters that Drizzt had in the Grand Melee. Excuse me. So we got to read our way through a few of these encounters during this scene, but there were two that I just loved reading, and I did talk about them in the Drizzt a little bit, but I just want to delve into them a little deeper here. So the first one actually has to do with the second encounter that Drizzt had. When Drizzt and Kelnaz were trying to reposition themselves, they found themselves face to face with two Drow. The one bolted, Kelnaz chased after him, and then the encounter itself between Drizzt and the other one, it didn't last too long. Drizzt expertly knocked the opponent's weapons wide, right? So he's coming at him with these two weapons, and he just slaps him to the side. He's wide open, just like, oh, what do I do? And just like gets double jabbed right into the chest before he has a chance to even react to that. But actually, let me back up just a second here. So after Drizzt's first encounter, we got to see what happened when a student got defeated. The blue light, the fall where you stand. And right after that, I was just kind of like, what would happen if someone didn't stop fighting?
I had the exact same thought the first time I read it, right? It's funny because like rereading books, you sometimes you don't remember all the small details.
Oh,
and
right.
then when you're reading it again, you're like, oh my, I do remember when I read this. I was like, wait, oh, and it kind of brings you back into that moment
Right.
as you're going back through it.
Yeah. And so
But I was the same spot with you.
yeah, so after that it was just kind of like, well, what's going to happen if they, and luckily for us, we got to actually see one student make that decision. So
For us, luckily, yeah.
So once the student was marked with the blue light and it was announced that he was defeated, he was just too angry to give up. He just kept going. He kept attacking. He continued attacking, and Drizzt was quick to basically like block his sword and then use his other sword to whack his wrist as hard as he could, which sent the attacker's sword just flying. And I mean, could you imagine getting hit by a stick of wood like right on the wrist? Like, oh, man, that's gotta hurt.
Close. Like I used to play baseball as a kid. You go out there with a cold bat in the middle of a dismal day and you catch it in the wrong spot. It will vibrate your core.
Yep.
That's about as close as I can get.
So before the attacker got to complain about his wrist for too long, a bolt of lightning exploded on his chest. Like,
when they first said that, I thought he was dead. Like I thought it was like
I did too.
Through the chest.
I thought so too. I was just like, oh crap. And then of course, like he's just like agonizing in pain on the ground. Like he lived, but it's like But Kelnaz hit the nail on the head, saying, if a master calls you out, then you are out.
Them's the rules, guy.
I absolutely loved that. The second encounter I wanted to talk about, that I wanted to dim light, was when Drizzt is sparring with Bergenyon of House Banray.
Before you drive in there, that's almost a bit of foreshadowing that Kelnaz really does understand the rules that are in place before him, like to the T. It points out that, like, oh, this guy is actually very wise. It comes across when you read it at first very much as matter of fact, like everybody should know the rules.
Right.
But knowing how this turns out, now that you're diving back in it again, the first thought I had was like, oh, that's kind of pointing out, like, look, he's very crafty and knowledgeable. He gets the rule, like to the T. He knows where you can press and where you can't.
Oh, I didn't even think about that. No, that's a good point. So yeah, this second encounter was, I guess it started out with at least 4 Drow that they were, well, 3 that they knew of. Drizzt, well, what was it? Kelnaz was fighting Bergenyon. We find out his name later. Drizzt was fighting the other 2. He basically dispatched both of those guys and then ran to help Kelnaz. And before he got there, he just like stabbed inside of a bush. Just like, there might be someone in there. Stab, and there happened to be someone in there.
In my great Call of Duty moments when I randomly spin around and hip fire kill somebody, that's how I feel Drizzt was just in the flow state, locked in, like chugga, 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 stab, got him, chugga, 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 chugga. Like, he's just locked in. Yep.
And eventually he gets to Kelnaz's aid. Turns out he's fighting, like I said, Bergenyon, a son of House Banray, which was a huge encounter for Drizzt. What's that?
A lot of B's there. Banray and Bergenyon.
Bergenyon. So he was face to face with one of the sons of Matron Banray, the first house of Menzoberranzan. Like, that's, phew. The encounter within the chapter didn't have too much description. It didn't say that it was, like, it didn't go through all the steps. It just said they danced for many minutes is how they described it, because they were both so skilled with swords that they're just going back and forth with no real advantage or disadvantage.
That's one of the beautiful moments in literature where, less is more. Like, they do so much good description, and so much beautiful, like just poetry basically of fights, that when they stop at that moment and he's like, and then they danced for 20 minutes, it kind of lets your mind just kind of envision,
And fill in the
how that fight
gaps.
goes. Yeah. And
Yeah.
it's like, it kind of feel like you're going to do that better than anything you could really write
Than
right there
words could
to do it
do.
justice.
Right. Yeah. So eventually, Bergignan made an error. He came at Drizzt with a double thrust low, an attack that.
That's not really an error, though, because we found out earlier the double thrust low is a very dominant move because it can only be parried to a block.
Correct.
Right? Yes.
Correct. It will end up being his downfall, though.
But it starts
but
out
it's not
being
an
a
error.
solid.
Correct.
Yeah.
You're right. Get
on the board.
Double thrust low coming at Drizzt. An attack that I can only believe that Bergignan thought was relatively safe, right? Like he would have been taught the same way. Unfortunately for him, Drizzt spent much of his training trying to come up with some kind of an advantageous block specifically for this attack. Zack taught Drizzt that the cross-down parry sufficed for this attack. It didn't give an advantage to Drizzt, but at least it took away an advantage from Bergignan, from the attacker. Drizzt executed the cross-down to perfection as he was trained, but something was different this time. He almost instinctively brought up a heel, crossed above the clashed swords, and drove his foot into the face of his opponent. When I'm trying to envision this, his arms are he's got his weight on his arms holding down the enemy's swords, and then he's kicking up and going over top of his arms like jump ropes, right? It's kind of an awkward motion, I feel like.
Well, I almost feel like what happens is he leans forward with the double parry down, right? And then as he has blocked that and driven the sword points down, on one of his remaining feet, he's going to essentially wall sit, right? Lower his backside down, and he's going to reverse his weight.
All right.
Backward. And then he's going to naturally be at an angle where bringing up his remaining foot, almost like a ballet dancer, right? And Zach Vane calls him a dancer, almost in a dance move, will then kick that remaining foot out in front of him. He'd be at a natural 45-degree angle, swinging that foot straight towards the face of the man who now has his sword points driven downward.
Yeah.
He's also now leaning forward, trying to have made that step.
Yeah.
But the core that it requires, the core fitness in you that you would need to pull that off is phenomenal.
Yeah, I can't even dream about doing that.
No.
So after all that, after he lands his kick, Drizzt drops a one-liner that just made me chuckle. I knew the parry was wrong. I just love that moment of aha.
Right. All this craziness going on, and it's just like a light bulb moment for him where it's like he's not even trying to dirty the name of the guy across from him. He's literally childlike wonderment once again, just like, I knew I was right. I knew it.
Right. and he's like, it's showing that he's still training. This is a training exercise for him. He's looking to better himself here. So I just love that moment. And so within this whole chapter, the way that R.A. Salvatore describes the combat and everything, just love it. As always, I just really appreciated these combat descriptions. Salvatore really seems as skilled with his pen as Drizzt is with his scimitars.
Oh, that's some good cheese. I like it. I agree, though. I mean, honestly, from the outset, one of the things that drew me into these stories and everything else was R.A. Salvatore's ability to verbally paint on a canvas. His ability to not just have hack and slash battles, but to turn that into a display of martial arts, an actual high-level display. And, to see the difference between somebody who's, a Bruce Lee level approach in Drizzt, a master of his craft, he's going to be a master of his craft, but he's already so far ahead potential wise of everybody else. And it's just to see that displayed in the terms of, combat, how it comes out, how the actions are taken. He does it so well in the large scale grand melee. He also does it really well when you get into, future parts of the larger combats, and the one-on-one displays get to be, again, like dances, like ballet.
Right.
So now that you've wrapped that part up with us, why don't we go ahead? We're going to grab my little lantern and my pack, and we're gonna do a dungeon delve, buddy. Making my for you on video watching, I'm walking down the stairs into the dungeon. So the dungeon delve is that part of the show where we're gonna link this chapter with our favorite parts of the tabletop game, 5e. For me, I decided I was gonna go with picking a class. I thought it'd be interesting to look at the variations that you can find while picking a class for your character, specifically in relation to this chapter, visual point. I'm going to specifically look at the fighter class.
That makes a lot of sense.
I thought so. I was hoping. Like I said, I'm kind of like a large cat on a limb, hoping it doesn't break under me. It's not going to translate perfectly to the book, but when Drow go to the academy, it's the beginning of their prestige fighter training. Before they receive training, they are raw and they are unshaped. So if you think about it, the academy is going to determine kind of what class of fighter they're going to have or they're going to become on the other side.
Okay.
So fighters are masters of martial combat, possessing little beyond finely honed skill with arms and armor. So it's slightly ahead of the pace where we find ourselves in the book, because we find out that some of the people Drizzt is fighting are not masters of their arms. They'll be okay.
They're level 0.
But 0.5. They are literally level 0 because this is the creation point of your character. Right. So I actually have that in here. When you're creating a character, it's going to be important to consider their backstory, what they went through in order to become who they are when you introduce them to the group. So day one, when you walk in and say, "Hi, my name is Sam. I'm a giant gnome barbarian." Get the conundrums there. Giant gnome barbarian. Anywho, you want to know how they went through their class, why they became a fighter, why they became a different type of fighter, what their experience was going through the school that made them become, say, a battle master instead of a champion. And we're going to get to that in a minute, but those different parts of the subclass that you pick, they actually can do an important part of shaping the character that you build and how their persona takes on the numbers that you roll. So fighters can succeed in armor of any kind, and they work with weapons of any kind.
That's nice. That's nice.
Especially early on. I mean, later on down the road, it's probably not so much, but early on you can struggle, and you always want to have to not re-roll your character.
That's the goal.
But whatever you would choose to go with is basically the option that works best, depends on your ability scores, right? So you just take it for granted that everybody knows where their ability scores are going to roll based on your character. You want a higher strength, higher dex, higher charisma. It really depends on what you're building.
Yeah.
For the fighter, either strength or dexterity is going to be crucial. So elves, mountain dwarves, halflings, dragonborn, forest gnomes, and half-orcs all make great fighters because they have either high strength or high dex normally. It's where you're going to put one of your dominant stats.
And it probably depends on what type of fighting style you're planning on using. Like if you're planning on like melee, you would want to choose strength. If you're looking at long range, like an archer or something like that, then dex. Yeah.
Now, this doesn't mean that you can't use a different race, because ultimately, and I always want to stress this to people when I talk to you about D&D, this is all up to you and how you want to create your character.
Right.
Like one of my absolute favorite things to do is make characters that go against the archetype. You as my DM understand that that's what I like to do, but that's just fun for me when we currently have a bard that doesn't sing. I was a turtle that grappled as a monk, right? I like having these little oddities in a character,
these oddballs,
things they have to overcome. And a lot of people, they want to build their character to maximize their dice rolls, but there's nothing wrong with that. I think that some of my favorite characters, though, they defy the norm a little bit. If you're just getting out, it's completely fine to be safe. Take, the fighter, take the champion stat, become a barbarian, and use everything in strength, hit people, do damage, make it a little easier for you. But as you go through, I think that one of the things that's really fun is, again, crafting those differences that you've got to overcome with your rolls.
Yep.
Like, oh, you're a scared barbarian. How's that going to work? I'd like to find out.
I rage and run away.
Right. I rage and use it to dash 3 times instead of 2. Like, it's just fun to see how that might play out. Because again, it's part of being an adventure in a group, right?
Yeah.
Your oddity might actually work really well with the other person's strength. Or it just might be fun to get together and watch your guy jump off a cliff because he was scared of the sheep that chased him. Whatever. Once you decide you want to be a fighter, think about it as entering the academy. What type of fighter will you become?
Yeah.
Are you a battle master? They use a pool of superior dice, which allow them to perform special combat maneuvers, add extra effects to your attacks, allowing them to do things like tripping and disarming your targets. Perhaps this would allow you to focus on some more tactics that can help your group play in a combat.
Yeah.
Or are you a champion? It's considered a simpler subclass to play against across every class because the mechanics are essentially, they're easy to learn, but they're still very effective.
Yeah.
You get several notable abilities like a second combat style and the ability to score critical hits on a 19 or a 20.
I just read
at
that.
High level.
That's really cool. Right? That's really cool.
Well, it goes a little further. If you want to just max all that out, once you get to a higher level, you score hits on an 18.
Oh, I see that. Yeah.
Yep. And then the classic role, this is the classic role that can win the entire combat on their own shoulders. Like everyone loves hitting a crit roll, and this should make it a bit easier. They did make a note that if you were a half orc fighter, I believe, then you could actually roll a 17 as well, because one of their like racial features give you a as a bonus or benefit at some point with the fighter. Mm-hmm. So I was like, that's amazing that 4 out of 20 spots. Essentially, you now have a 20% chance, 1 in 5, of being able to crit hit and do a ton of damage.
That's crazy. I'm looking up orcs, half orcs.
You could also be an Eldritch Knight. Now, they supplement their martial prowess with the ability to cast abjuration and evocation spells. It allows them to defend themselves and their allies, blasting their enemies with spells like Fireball. Everybody loves the classic, right?
Mm-hmm.
They use their intelligence for their spell casting. So high elves and forest gnomes make great Eldritch Knights. But remember, never be afraid to shatter that mold and build how you want. If no one ever thought to look outside the mold for their character builds, we'd have never gotten Drizzt. And the world that we fell in love with, and the D&D is no different. There are no limitations to the world that you want to build or the characters that you want to build within it. As long as you can sell your DM on it. I mean, a lot of times I like to think that these blueprints, they're more like vague suggestions.
Oh, absolutely.
Right? I mean, for me, homebrew ideas really entertain me because it's almost like DLC on your favorite digital game.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, oh, today I have a Eric Corcoran character, and actually I'd like to make him, have 4 wings instead of 2. And this is why, because what happened, as long as you can spin that yarn and add it properly and build the stats right, why not? You're essentially, you're finding ways to expand upon the playground that you were given.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's cool. What was your dungeon delve, Justin?
Well, actually, before we jump into mine, I did find with the half orcs, they have something. It doesn't look like they get to change it to a 17 or whatever it was, but rather they have something called Savage Attack, where if you score a critical hit with your melee attack weapon, then you get to roll an extra damage dice.
Ooh.
So,
okay.
So if you
I
roll
read the note wrong, that's definitely what they must have meant.
If you roll a 2d6s on your attack, on your melee attack, then you can roll 3 if you got a critical.
Right.
But then it's like,
if
you also double
it. Roll 6.
Well, it would be 4.
Instead
like
of 4.
If you roll 2, you would roll 4, but then you get an extra 1. So you'd roll.
So it wouldn't be 2 plus 1 doubled.
No.
Okay.
It's
but still, that is
additional,
a massive advantage when it comes to doing damage.
Yeah.
Especially as you level up and get nastier weapons.
Yeah. I never played as an orc before, or a half orc. Well, I didn't play as many things.
My favorite are always the people who play their characters with the social stigmas that would come with it. So I played a one-off campaign with a few friends of mine, and it was great because we had an orc and a dwarf in the party.
Ooh, that wouldn't go well.
No, and we were all supposed to be an adventuring party that's doing a one-off in a dungeon. It's a survival set, right?
Right.
So as soon as they start, my character's like, I'm going to go through door 2. And the guy over there is like, I'm going to go through door 5. And then it comes to the orc, and he goes, I'm going to charge the dwarf. And everybody looks at him and goes,
what the heck,
dude?
dude?
We're playing, let's make a deal. Like, pick a door and go choose it out. And he goes, no, my orc would see the dwarf and absolutely hate him. And the dwarf goes, yep, I'm going to fight the orc. It's like, hold on, there's 6 of us, and
Here we
2
go.
of us are now fighting before we ever start. Yeah, so we let them hash it out. You
He's
know,
like,
hey, you guys do what you do. But it was entertaining because it's like, right, you're playing an orc, and
yeah,
technically orcs don't like the dwarves, and vice versa. They're not going to have a lot of fun with you.
right.
So the same way, drows won't be palling around with gnomes anytime soon. Well, they'd have to fight each other.
Yeah.
That was so entertaining.
All right. What a great dungeon delve this week, Jeffrey. That was I couldn't have thought of doing the fighter class, but that was perfect. So this week we're actually getting a little up there on time, so I'll make this quick. This week I wanted to look into the lightning spell that was used to knock down Drizzt's opponent that kept fighting after he was defeated. There are actually a number of different spells in the player's handbook, each of them having different visual effects that are going on, different amounts of damage, etc. The one was called Call Lightning. It actually summons a thunderstorm that is able to strike lightning at your foes. So that one doesn't really seem to fit. That one doesn't seem to fit because it's like, well, they didn't summon a whole like thunderstorm, but that's really cool. There was also Chain Lightning, which is a cool spell where basically like you hit one foe and then the lightning jumps from that foe to another foe, and I think there's a limit to it, but yeah, which we didn't see that happen either, so that one isn't quite the best fit. But then I found Lightning Bolt. Honestly, I probably should have went straight for Lightning Bolt, but me and my concrete thought process, I started at the beginning of the spell book and I went to the back, so I went in alphabetical order. I'm not always like that, but this time I was. But Lightning Bolt seemed to fit really well here. So Lightning Bolt is a 3rd level evocation spell. So evocation, what does that mean? I had to look that one up. I found that evocation magic is known for their potent damage dealing effects. So it doesn't matter if the spell comes from a deity or elemental energy or wherever, but they are spells that are only castable by those that are really like masters of the weave. Now, of course, again, this is a 3rd level spell, so you're not like a master, but you know it's higher up there. You're not casting level 3 spells at even level 3. I don't think you are as like a wizard. So the spell casting time is 1 action, and it has a range of 100 feet. It requires a verbal, somatic components as well as material components. The material components I thought were clever. It's a bit of fur and either a rod of amber, crystal, or glass. Which I'm just like, I used to be a science teacher like for 9 years, and I'm just like, that's exactly how you play around with electricity. You take the fur, you rub it on the rod, and then you like can wave it around like a
static electricity.
Yeah, you have static electricity on the rod, and then you can use it to like roll an empty soda can around on the table. It's really cool stuff. So I'm just like, of course those are the materials to cast this spell. Like that's perfect. So anyway, when you cast Lightning Bolt, a bolt of lightning spans 100 feet from you in one direction, and it hits every creature in that line. Well, they have a chance to roll a dex saving throw. So if they manage to save against that, then they only take half damage, but then on a fail, they take full damage, which is 8d6 lightning damage.
Holy cow. It's quick math for those folks at home, right? That jeepers. 8d6. It's going to be...
It's like an average... 48? It's an average in the mid-20s.
Yeah, so you have 48 max damage, though, that you can just blow a hole through most people standing in front of you.
Yeah.
At level 3, your character may not have 48 hit points, depending on what you are.
Right.
Like, even a save can just really do damage.
Yeah. So that really is quite the damage dealer. So no wonder that Drow student didn't stand back up. Oh, I did forget one other thing. Apparently you can cast it at higher levels, and like at level 4 you would get an extra d6 to roll with that damage. At level 5 it would be 2 d6s. It's an extra d6 for each level above the 3rd level. So anyway, that was a lot of damage that Drow took. And, it was apparent after looking up that spell these masters are not messing around. They were, if you're out, you're out. You better lay down. So anyway, that's just my dungeon.
Kelnaz knows you're out.
Yeah. If you're out, you're out. So that's my dungeon delve this week. We went overtime this week, but that's okay.
Blame it on the insight check.
Yeah, the insight check, and it's a lot of fun doing these. So we keep chatting it up. So, but that's going to do it for this episode. So thank you for listening. Remember that if you like the show, give us a 5-star rating. Also, make sure you're getting the most out of this podcast. Make sure you're reading along with us.
Reading isn't always too efficient. I get it. I understand. Right? We all read at different speeds, and who wants to spend hours going through these wonderfully crafted pages, one after another? This beautiful world that we live in gives us options. It does. Just pick up the audiobook and listen to it at your own convenience. Maybe you have a long commute at work, right? Maybe you work at a job that allows you to listen to music. Or maybe you are that rare breed that trains body and mind so you can listen to it while you're at the gym. So press play and get swole. When you've finished chapter 12, just go ahead and shoot us an email at drizztdoneright@gmail.com. You can always follow along with any of our social media sites. We have Facebook, we have Instagram, both of them, Drizzt Done Right. Find it, follow along. We'll always give you updates on things that we've got coming along. We'd love to hear from you.
Yeah.
Join the Discord. Grab that link inside the podcast description. Smash it in. Be part of our Dim Light Squad. Yeah. We'd love to hear from you.
And remember that at the end of the description, there's a way for you to donate to the podcast as well. If you like what we're doing, send us a little digital love. That would be awesome. We're looking to hopefully eventually make this a little more professional. And did I jump on your toes there? Did you want to do that? Sorry.
I'm going to do it anyway, buddy.
So it's been a blast, but now it's time to say goodbye.
Guys, things have been going so well. We've been having such a blast. We set up the link that Justin just talked about in the end of the episode.
Sorry.
If you guys want to help support the show, send a cup of coffee, send a beer, send us lunch. Your donations are never required, but they are darn sure admired. We appreciate all you guys. One of the things we wanted to do would make it a little bit more interactive. Justin, you think we should just go ahead and get a little peek for those who stayed here?
Sure.
So towards the end of the season, one of the things I want to build up to is that we want to have a D&D campaign, a one-shot with you guys, our listeners, people who are members of the Dim Light Squad. Come on in, shoot us an email. We're going to work towards, for the rest of this chapter, building a campaign. I'm not going to tell you yet what it's centered around, but it's going to have to do with something in this chapter. Hopefully, maybe going to get, I don't know, maybe, what do you think, 12 people? It'll vary. I'd like to get a bunch of people, but to come on in and be part of a one-off, have a character build, we'll get you guys in, play a little D&D campaign, run a DM. I might have another DM come in and hopefully keep things moving at a brisk pace. But right now it's in the rudimentary planning stages because we still got about 4 months so we get to the end of the book. So guys, follow along, smash the likes, give us some ratings, show us a little bit of love.
Awesome.
Remember, play fair, be well. Farewell, guys.